PSG, Dortmund, Milan, and Newcastle. Newcastle, you wanted to be back in the Champions League. Here you are. The Champions League group stages were drawn yesterday, and let's take a look at the groups because there is some very, very tasty fixtures. Now, we'll start with Group A, Bayern Munich in there with Manchester United, Copenhagen and Galatasaray. And for Manchester United, this is a potential tricky group, I think. Galatasaray away is always a tough game, and they've got a good team. They're building something. Potential banana skin, I think. And Bayern Munich, well, they're probably my favourites for the whole competition. Their squad at the moment is so good. And as I record this, they look like they're going to sign Paulinho from Fulham as well. So it's a very good squad. They've just added Harry Kane. They've got Thomas Tuchel as manager, who's obviously won the Champions League before. He's got great pedigree for this competition. And with that squad that he's been allowed to build, fair play to Bayern Munich going out and spending this money. And it just shows as well, they're a massive club. You know, people might doubt them because of the Bundesliga and how sort of uncompetitive it's been in recent times. That can sometimes make a club falter in Europe, you know, complacency and whatnot, but not for Bayern Munich. That is not the case. I think they are one of Europe's best clubs, and as I say, they are my favourites for the competition. Let's move on to Group B, Seville, Arsenal, PSV and Lens. This is a good group for Arsenal. It's a very sort of Europa League group, if you will. But Arteta will be keen to start well in this competition. And he'll be keen to make a go of the Champions League. Arsenal are back in the Champions League, of course. Yeah, they got to that final, didn't they, against Barcelona, but they've never won it. It would be amazing, and I think on the high list of priorities for Arteta this season. Last year they made a serious challenge for the title. Will they make a serious challenge for the Champions League? And can they maintain both of those challenges at the same time? There is a massive game for them this weekend against Manchester United, and there is a separate podcast episode which is a preview for that game, go into the history, obviously look at some of the stats and just give some general predictions on the game and especially the tactics of Arteta. In Group C, we have Napoli and Real Madrid. That is the obvious standout fixture because the other teams are Braga and Union Berlin. You would expect Napoli and Real Madrid to go straight through, no problems. It's just a case then of who is going to finish first and who is going to finish second, and that will likely come down to who can beat who out of these two teams. And I think those games are going to be very fun. Napoli, not yet to be seen how they start this season, if they are going to just absolutely fly in Serie A again. We'll see over the next month, and certainly by the time these games come around, all these teams will be showing some signs of form this season, and you can start to make some sort of general predictions about where they might finish in the league, how they might do in the Champions League, and then obviously once those Champions League games get underway, players then have to play 3 times a week, and you see what these teams are made of. Group D is where you will find last year's finalists, Inter Milan. They're in there with Salzburg, Real Sociedad and Benfica, and I would imagine that all of those teams believe they can qualify, which is probably not the case in some groups. I mean, Union Berlin, I'm looking forward to, just to go back to Group C. They've done really well. Incredible journey for them in Germany in recent years. And now for them to be in a group with Real Madrid and Napoli is quite special, to be fair, adds to their story. And there are some interesting ties, and that's why I love the Champions League. Europe's best competition until maybe the Saudis create something and it becomes the norm. So into Group A, we've got Feyenoord, Atletico Madrid, Lazio and Celtic. That is a very, very good group. That's probably my second favourite because my favourite to move on to it is Group F, which is PSG, Dortmund, Milan and Newcastle. Newcastle, you wanted to be back in the Champions League. Here you are. This is your re-entry into the Champions League, and Newcastle fans, congratulations, I guess, because you're going to Paris, you're going to Germany, you're going to Dortmund, you're going to Milan, and you're also welcoming all those people, all those fans as well, to St James's Park. It's going to be incredible watching the games, the Champions League games at St James's Park this season. That is for sure. Just mouth-watering fixtures regardless in that group. And of course, Milan against Newcastle, now the Tonali derby. On to Group C then, and I guess it's happened again. Manchester City they just always seem to get an easy group. It's weird, isn't it? I wonder if there's anything to that. There's ice on the balls when they're brought out. Man City, Leipzig, Crvena Zvezda, and Young Boys, and I've definitely murdered the pronunciation of that name. So an easy group for Manchester City, no doubt about that. And Group H, Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar and Antwerp. That's an interesting one, but you would expect Barcelona to be heavy favourites to go through, and even in their own camp they will have confidence. Porto and Shakhtar, both capable in recent years of getting results against big teams, that's for sure. One obvious, oh my god, that they're not here is Juventus. Starting a Champions League without Juventus always seems strange. They are a heavyweight in European football and they're not here, and it's a chance for teams like Newcastle to really put in good performances. Some of the teams I'm looking forward to watching, just to round off the video. Napoli, of course. I'm just interested generally to see how they do this season. Osimhen is still there though, and he loves the Champions League. So I'm going to do some predictions as well, and just fly through them. So Group A, I believe Bayern Munich and Manchester United will get through. Man United will finish second because I think they might lose potentially to Galatasaray away. Group B, Seville, Arsenal will go through in that group. Group C, Napoli and Real Madrid will go through. Unsure on the positions because it's a toss-up, to be honest, between who is going to beat who in Napoli and Madrid. Group D, you've got Inter Milan and Benfica, I think, will go through. I think Benfica might even win the group. Inter Milan got to the final, but I'm not sure they'll get that far or even to the semis in this year's competition. Group E, we've got Feyenoord and Atletico Madrid, and I'm actually going to say that Celtic and Brendan Rodgers escape this group, and I think Atletico Madrid in recent years haven't been the team they were. Big season for them in the Champions League at least, and I would put them to go through with Celtic. And again, if you talk about good games coming up, Atletico Madrid going to Celtic is going to be pretty special, isn't it? Group F then, who do I think will go through in Group F? Well, PSG, yet to be seen this season. They've not started incredibly well in Liga, and I think they drew the first 2 games. Their XG is quite low. Well, it's very low compared to what it has been, of course, in previous seasons. Mbappe's coming in now, but he's having to adapt, and the whole team is having to adapt to play in a different way. And I think once they get there, they'll be a better team than they were in previous seasons, because they've not got Messi or Neymar. And I think if you have Messi, Neymar and Mbappe in a team together at the same time, you have to play a certain way, because you have to accept that you're not going to get all of those players running back and putting the hard yards in for the team. I actually think Newcastle will get out of the group, because from what I've seen from Eddie Howe, he is very good at these kind of tight tactical battles. Maybe go to Dortmund and get a 1-0 win, or they'll get a 1-1 draw in Paris, and it just turns out that that's a good result. You don't, when you don't have to win every game. I think some managers come into their own, and I think Eddie Howe is one of those. I actually think that recent Liverpool result as well is a great lesson for Eddie Howe, because I think you're always learning, and he's going to, at Bournemouth, he wouldn't have had too many big games like that, right? Because you're Bournemouth, people are expecting to beat you. He obviously has acclimatised to Newcastle now, but I still think he's got lessons to learn. He's still a fantastic manager, but the Champions League is a great place to learn those lessons, and that Liverpool game was a great lesson for Eddie Howe. He made mistakes in the game, tactically and with his substitutions as well, and he will know that if he played the game again, he would not make the same changes. Obviously hindsight and everything, but it's a lesson. In Group G, I predict that Man City and Leipzig will go through. And in Group H, Barcelona and Porto. I think Porto are an exciting team, always adding young talent, and then just obviously selling it on. Same with Benfica, but they've got good recent pedigree in the Champions League. Some big results for them in previous campaigns. So that was the Champions League preview. If you've got any comments of your own, please leave them if you're watching on YouTube or TikTok or wherever. If you listen to the podcast, try and leave a review if you've got a moment. It does help the rankings and whatnot. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, whichever you prefer or use. It's all good. And finally, who do you think will win the Champions League? I think Bayern Munich. Obviously, you've got them, you've got Man City, you've got Real Madrid, who would be the standout favourites for me. Barcelona have been playing very well under Xavi. They won the league last year. It was a poor performance in Europe, but he was still kind of settling in. You could see they're not the finished article, and they might not be yet, but they're getting there. They're a good team now under Xavi, and I think this is a great chance this year's Champions League to show the world just where they're at.